on the day.
Okay. Just to remind members, mobile phones, etc. I'll just hold for a second. Okay, welcome to this meeting of the Regional Development Committee. Can I remind members to switch off mobile phones, etc., except the electronic devices. And that applies also to folks who have joined us in the public gallery. Today's committee will receive two departmental briefings this morning. Firstly, officials will brief us on policy proposals for a water bill, followed by a briefing on the forthcoming off-street parking functions which are going to district councils. We also have two items of subordinate legislation which I need to be quoted for at the end of the meeting. Move to agenda item 3, which is the meeting of the 28th of May. It's page 6 of your electronic packs. First of all, any matters of accuracy in those minutes? I sign them for the record. Okay, I did skip a little ahead there. I missed a number of things. I have an apology from Ross Hussey. And then agenda item 2 is Chair's business. There's tabled papers there. Members will see a letter that I sent yesterday to the Minister for Regional Development, Danny Kennedy, expressing our disappointment once again that after failing to brief us on the railway investment prioritisation strategy, which this committee had been interested in, they again did the exact same thing yesterday and failed to brief the committee in relation to the Belfast on the Move consultation process. Members will see from the letter that the department, after us writing to them on the 26th of February, and as you know, the committee and indeed I publicly have been supportive of the Belfast on the Move programme. We asked for briefings on the results of the survey. The department responded on the 6th of March 2014, stating officials are currently finalising the report of the surveys, and as usual, this will need to be cleared by the Minister before being released to the committee. We anticipate that we should be in a position to brief the committee at the end of April, beginning of May. Failure once again by the department to do so, and despite the support for Belfast on the Move, I see that even one of the Minister's own colleagues on Belfast City Council is disputing the facts around the survey. But we're not in a position to know exactly what was in the survey, because even at this stage we have not received any papers or anything else from the department. Absolutely disgraceful, members, that we're treated in this way once again. Cathal.
Chair, I absolutely agree that any one of us, particularly, but you in particular, could have been approached by the media and be asked for a statement on anything without the information at your hand, and I think that's incredibly unfair. So I agree with your sentiments you say and sentiments expressed in the letter.
Thanks, Cathal. John Dallett.
Chairman, you know, when we lose respect for each other, then we tend to lose respect for the outside world as well, and there's evidence of that. There is a liaison committee, which is you will know about, obviously. Yeah. It might be an issue that should be raised there, because Danny Kennedy's not in his own. There have been very, very serious issues relating to health, for example, that have been issued on a Friday when most Assembly members are in their constituency office. So it's across the board. I'm sorry that our Minister decided to do that, because if he had come to the committee, he would have been warmly welcomed with the, particularly his railway investment strategy, which of course we gladly endorsed. Unfortunately, it was seen as an election stunt whereas I'm sure you and all of us would want to believe that it's a serious effort to get back to Northern Ireland, its railway infrastructure.
Thank you, John. Anyone else? Joe Byrne.
Chairman, would it be helpful if you and the Vice Chair sought a private meeting with the Minister and have this out in that forum of confidentiality?
I was just going on after the comments to say that I spoke to the Minister yesterday, and the Minister did indicate that it shouldn't have happened. So, I mean, we will have an opportunity. I'm not sure when the Minister is due up here again. Not before summer recess, but I mean, I think we have made the point now, and you know, it works two ways. If papers come late in future from officials, I will reject them if they don't come in time to allow the clerks to so there's two can play at this. If that's the way they want to do it, but I don't want to do it that way.
Chairman, that's the reason
I
I
want to
think
progress business.
politically you and the Vice Chair should meet him privately and see where the gremlins are.
Yeah, quite happy to do that, Joe, and that request will be made to the Minister. We'll try and get a meeting next week sometime. Alex Easton.
Just quickly, obviously it's very disappointing, and I think this committee wants to have a good working relationship with the Minister and the Department. When this sort of thing happens, it sort of builds up mistrust and stuff like that. So we need to emphasise we want to work positively, but it's a two-way process, and we want that to work coming back towards us as well.
Well, I think, you know, we have been working positively, very positively, this committee, with the Department and with the Minister on many aspects of the remit of the Department. Also, could I say, just in relation to the point that John Ballard raised, the issue has been raised with the head of civil service at the CLG committee, and both the deputy chair and myself have raised the matter on a number of occasions, as have, as you pointed out, other committees as well. So I think if we can leave it there, we'll take up Joe's proposal to have a meeting. Then, just one other issue for those of you who were involved last week in the evidence session at the Hilton Hotel at Templepatrick in relation to the cycling inquiry and how cycling can benefit the economy. After that, we made a study visit to Chain Reaction Cycles at Yoke. And I must say, for those of us who were there, it was a very informative, and there's some papers on your electronic packs in relation to the presentation that was given to us. But for a company just a few years ago that started up with 2 people in a small bicycle shop in Ballynewer, now employing over 700 people, and putting stuff out to, I think it's 115 different countries throughout the world, involved in research and development in relation to components for cycling, which has gone out across the world as well. It was a great experience to be able to see that. A company that last year had a turnover of 154 million, off the top of my head was the figure, and some 40 million plus of that remains within the Northern Ireland economy. So from small beginnings, a company like that has done a lot, and certainly we were very encouraged, and they are now trying to break into other markets. And certainly since the meeting last week, I've had a conversation with folks in relation to future visits to places like China, where they want to break into the Chinese market now. But it was amazing to see that the stuff coming off the line. I think some of the folks watched, and it was going from Russia right across the world, some of the parcels going out. So a really worthwhile visit, and one I'm sorry everybody wasn't able to come to see, but I know that Cathal was very impressed, and we're going to bring him in there now for anything that I've missed on it.
No, Chair, I think you got everything there, but it's an amazing homebred company, 20 years in the go, 154 million, as you say, turnover. I think the invitation was extended to other members to visit at any time, so that's just maybe all I want to say. But incredibly impressive company and great working practices as well within the company.
Yeah, and what seems to be a very happy workforce with an international team dealing with queries from right around the world, which we saw as well. Every nationality represented in the international team. So, John Ballard.
Chairman, apologies, I wasn't able to go in Evans, but I certainly will take up the offer of the hospital appointment. I think any encouragement we can give to local job creation, we should do it. And with your permission, I wrote to the hotel we were based on afterwards, expressing concern that their bottled water was imported. They have replied saying they will now source water locally. So I just say that and we should express our views and our opinions very strongly. If there are locally produced products, whether in this building or in the hotels we go to, then we should complain and we can make changes.
Can I just add in relation to the conversations that we had with them, some of which was in private obviously, that moves will be made. As you know, there's a number, the office is opening in Beijing, and there's a number of trade missions, and I think things are going to be looked at to make sure that they're included in future trade missions. Okay. We move then to agenda item 4, I think we're at. And that's correspondence. It's page 13 of your electronic packs. And I'm going to get the clerk to take you through that.
Thank you, Chair. Item 3 is correspondence from the Department regarding committee queries on the Connswater Community Greenway presentation. Item 5 is a copy of the, as the Chair has indicated, a copy of the chain reaction cycle presentation to the committee. Item 6 is correspondence from Connswater Community Greenway regarding committee queries. Item 7 is correspondence from Outdoor Recreation Northern Ireland, again regarding queries on their presentation. And table papers, I would refer members to correspondence from the Central Committee Office regarding a guide to the powers and operation of statutory committees for chairpersons and members.
Okay, members, any questions on any of the correspondence? Then can we note the items for noting? Okay. And are members content to include correspondence to the department from Connswater Greenway presentation in the inquiry report? Also, for the inquiry report, the content of the chain reaction cycles presentation. Also, correspondence from Connswater Community Greenway, also for the inquiry report, and correspondence from Outdoor Recreation Northern Ireland for the inquiry report. Can we agree those? And also Sustran for the inquiry report as well. Can we agree those pieces of correspondence for the report? And then are members content to forward correspondence from George Hewitt to the department for comment? That agreed? And are members content to inform the committee staff if any of you wish to attend the Green Investment Bank workshop on the 10th of June? If you speak to the clerks as soon as possible in relation to that. Okay, we move then to agenda item 5, which is departmental briefing on the water bill. It's page 67 of your electronic packs. Can I ask the officials to come forward? I welcome Robert Crawford, who's the head of Water Policy Division, PRD, Stuart Whiteman, Water Policy, and Louise Green, Water Policy Division. You're all very welcome. Some of you know strangers to the committee, so can I ask you to go ahead and make your presentation and then leave yourself open for appropriate questions?
Chair, thank you very much. Can I first perhaps thank the committee for agreeing to reschedule the long-term water strategy briefing, which was to be today, to a later date, and allow us to complete our work on that. That's very helpful. Thank you very much. We're with you this morning, however, to seek the committee's approval to proceed to consultation on a number of measures which the Minister for Regional Development proposes to include in the new water bill. We've provided the committee with a copy of the draft consultation paper and, for ease of reference, a copy of the presentation we're about to give you. The main reason for bringing forward primary legislation at this time is because the Assembly's mandate has been extended by a year, and that means that the existing legislative provision which allows Northern Ireland Water to be funded by direct subsidy would run out before the end of that mandate, so it is necessary to extend that for a further year to ensure that that provision is available and money can continue to go to NI Water throughout the whole life of this mandate. We're also using the opportunity of primary legislation to bring forward a number of other proposals, including a couple I think that have attracted discussion at the committee, and in particular I refer to the problem of unadopted private sewers, which came up in a previous discussion of the committee, and I think lead in drinking water is also featured in briefings before to you. We propose to commence consultation immediately if the committee is content today with the proposals, and we had intended that would be for a 12-week period, and we'd return to the committee most likely in late September with the outcome of that consultation and with our final proposals for the committee's consideration in detail. I'm going to ask Stuart to take forward the presentation on the contents, proposed contents of the bill, and then we'd be very happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thanks, Robert. I'm going to just run through the slides that were sent up. If I can turn to the second slide. This covers the proposed timetable. The policy consultation, as Robert says, is going to run through to the end of August. Following public consultation, we'll review the responses and come back to the committee with the draft consultation feedback report for seeking executive clearance to final policy proposals in the autumn. Subject to executive approval, the bill will be drafted over the winter months and introduced to the Assembly next spring, and hopefully that would land at the committee stage would probably be this time next year, in around June it will start. The next slide outlines the key drivers for taking forward the legislation. Firstly, as Robert said, with the current Assembly's mandate extended by 1 year to 2016, it is necessary to extend the Department's current powers to pay subsidy to Northern Water to 2017 to fulfil the Programme for Government's commitment of not introducing household water charges during the current mandate. Secondly, in line with the Government's red tape challenge, we are proposing to reduce some of the regulatory burden currently placed on Northern Ireland Water. We are also proposing some governance changes through social and environmental guidance to improve the Department's control, the Minister's control and influence over Northern Ireland Water. We are also proposing to make some changes around sewer connection and adoption to implement the Committee's recommendations in its inquiry into unadopted roads. And we're also proposing to make some changes to improve the future management and maintenance of private drinking water supply pipes. And finally, we're proposing to introduce changes to sewer connections to protect and improve the resilience of the public sewerage system. Turning to the next slide, this outlines the first proposal in a bit more detail, extension of subsidy. The committee will recall considering the water bill in 2012, which extended the existing subsidy powers by 3 years to March 2016. We now need to extend this power again following the Assembly's 1-year extension to facilitate the elections in 2016. A 1-year extension is proposed to the subsidy power. This will allow the next Assembly to consider the long-term funding arrangements for water and sewerage services. We are also proposing to include an enabling power in the legislation so that future extensions to the subsidy period can be made using subordinate legislation rather than primary legislation. This will have been the third bill to extend the subsidy period, so by providing the enabling power, it would reduce the administrative burden and taking a future bill through the Assembly. The next slide outlines the second proposal, which is to give the Minister power to issue directions to the utility regulator on social and environmental matters. At present, the Minister issues social and environmental guidance to the utility regulator. We recently briefed the committee on the Minister's draft guidance for PC15. The utility regulator must have regard to the ministerial guidance, but is not mandatory, i.e. it doesn't have to abide by the guidance. The Executive currently provides over 75% of Northern Ireland Water's income, and through the investment strategy, nearly £1 billion of investment is earmarked for Northern Ireland Water during PC15. It therefore seems reasonable that the Minister has more influence over how this money is spent. In addition, to manage flood risk going forward, it may be necessary to require Northern Ireland Water to carry out additional duties over and above those of a typical water and sewerage company. Similar arrangements now exist in England and Wales. The New Water Act that just got royal assent last month gives the Secretary of State new powers to publish a statement setting out strategic priorities and objectives which the regulator of what must follow in England and Wales. Turning to the next slide, and this outlines the third proposal, which is to streamline the requirements on Northern Ireland Water in relation to water resource management plans and drought plans. A water resource management plan is a 25-year look into the future and how water resources will be managed to meet future supply needs in terms of drinking water. Drought plans set out how water supplies can continue to be provided without compromising the environment during a period of drought. Northern Ireland Water currently has to provide a water resource management plan every 5 years and a drought plan every 3 years. The proposal is to reduce the individual requirements around these two plans by replacing the requirement to produce two separate plans with a requirement to produce one single plan to cover both the water resource management plans, drought planning aspects and additional resilience aspects. Northern Ireland Water estimate that by producing one plan will save around £200,000. If you extend that to like a 12-year period, we're basically looking at producing two plants instead of 7, with savings at an estimated around £1.5 million. Turning to the next slide, it relates to the next proposal on private residential sewage systems. This is an issue that the committee will be well aware of from its inquiry in 2012 into the unadopted roads. Prior to 2007, joint road and sewer bonds were a requirement, but after 2007, sewer bonds are no longer a requirement and have been taken away and separated from the road bonds. As a minimum, we want sewers that are connected to public system in the future to be constructed to appropriate standards and adopted. This is proposal 1 on the slide. The second proposal, linking sewer adoption agreements, which include bonds, to private street adoption in the future, would ensure any residential sewage systems in public roads are satisfactorily constructed and adopted, regardless of whether they are to be connected or not. This is proposal 2. And proposal 3 is very important because the level of bond is critical to this. And it is essential that the bond level is set at a level that is high enough to cover the cost of remedial works in a situation where developers do default on their obligations through insolvency or whatever. But equally, bonds must be set at a level that is affordable to the construction industry. We are therefore reviewing the level of bonds in this consultation document and are welcoming comments on that. Turn to the next slide. This proposal is about reducing the amount of surface water entering the combined sewage system. Existing legislation effectively provides developers with a right to connect surface water drainage to combined sewers if no separate storm drain or public sewer is available. We want to reverse the current presumption and make connection of surface water drains to combined sewers a last resort. Effectively, we're proposing that there be no connection at all for commercial development, formalising existing practice. This basically means the likes of your large car parks, Northern Ireland Water effectively can't already do. They do have limited powers to turn those down because of the impact of the surface water from car parks and roofs would have on their sewage system. And we're also proposing that restrictions would be placed on the residential combined sewer connections for surface water. I will emphasise this is only the surface water aspects of the connections. It doesn't affect the foul side of it. The intention is to encourage developers to employ sustainable drainage systems, often referred to as SUDs, on site to manage and attenuate surface water locally. Sustainable drainage systems not only reduce the surface water loading on the combined sewage system, but can also provide amenity benefits and are often cheaper than conventional engineering solutions such as large pipes and pumping stations. If I turn to the next slide, it provides 2 illustrations. The first illustration is of Cicely Park, the flooding that members will be aware of back in June 2012. This emphasises the need to reduce the amount of surface water entering the sewage system and reducing the loading. The second illustration is an example of a proposed sustainable drainage scheme in Scotland, which shows how a new development can be designed and landscaped to attenuate and manage surface water locally on site, on the surface, rather than collecting it in pipes. And turning to the next slide, this is the final proposals, which are focused on managing the water quality and leakage risks posed by private supply pipes. Proposal 1 is about introducing a public awareness campaign to educate customers on how to manage the risks posed by lead supply pipes. The private supply pipe is the part of the pipe that goes from the boundary of the property to the curtilage of the property to the wall or the sink in somebody's kitchen, and it's a responsibility of the householder. So by introducing a campaign, the public awareness campaign could include things about how to run the tap for 30 seconds or a minute in the morning to remove the water that's maybe been sitting in the pipe overnight. It can also emphasise that there will be other internal plumbing that might have lead in people's houses. The focus on people to drink the water from their kitchen tap rather than the water from other taps in the house. Proposal 2 is about enabling Northern Ireland Water to replace private lead supply pipes during routine water mains rehabilitation work with the permission of the householder. If they're going down a street and they come across lead supply pipes, it's effectively giving Northern Ireland Water the power, with the permission of the householder, to replace the lead pipes as part of that routine work. Proposal 3 is about providing the Department with powers to introduce a grant scheme to subsidise the costs of supply pipe replacement. It's estimated the costs are around £500 on average per property. This scheme could potentially cover the full cost or partially subsidise the costs to householders. Proposal 4 is about promoting lead supply pipe replacement through future house sales or lets by requiring the person selling or letting a property to either declare the presence of lead supply pipes or remove them. This would only apply to houses built before 1970 where lead supply pipes would exist. Proposal 5, finally, is about giving the powers to enter private land without prior permission to address emergencies such as major bursts. During the major freeze-thaw event in December 2010, there was a number of scenarios where large commercial, sort of like industrial estates, which were away for the holidays, Northern Ireland Water couldn't get on site to address what was quite a large burst. This would effectively give them those emergency powers to be able to go on site to address those bursts and minimise the damage to property. The last slide just gives an explanation of the water distribution system. It shows where the water mains, the communication pipes are, and the supply pipes are. And that's a very, very quick run through the proposals, and welcome questions. Thank
Chair,
you.
can I say that there are a number of options set out in the consultation paper, so clearly there's a lot of detailed work to be done on exactly how we take those forward. We don't intend to solve all of the issues around each of the options, but we intend to deal with the questions that we have now.
Yeah, maybe if I could start just to clarify some issues. You want to make an enabling power to extend water paying subsidy by means of subordination. By means of which resolution?
Basically, we want to talk to the draftsman about that primarily, but normally if the policy is settled and you're simply extending an existing policy, that would be by negative resolution.
Well, can I make it very clear that the committee's view will be by affirmative?
Well, that we would obviously take into account during the consultation, Chair, and I think the point I would make in respect of that is that without extension there will be no subsidy and there will therefore be no money for NI Water. So we're not inviting the committee, or we would not be inviting the committee to consider a change in the current policy by extending the existing policy of the Executive.
Yeah, but the fact is that it's a very serious issue. Which we believe, from our point of view, as a committee, needs to be brought to the floor of the House. And that's the view on that. I believe that everybody should have an opportunity to have a say in the Assembly at the end of the day, which really doesn't extend the time limit, in terms of what would happen. But that's a discussion that we need to have. But I'm putting that marker down right now,
Certainly, Chair.
so that you're aware of where we might stand on it.
Okay.
Just in relation to the surface water issue, which you raised, Stuart, what have you had discussions with? I understand the systems and all that can be put in, but some of these systems are very expensive. So that's obviously got a knock-on effect to the person who eventually buys the property and all the rest of it. So what discussions have taken place with the experts in relation to these systems? I'm not saying that you aren't experts also on it, but in terms of the planners, in terms of the industry that's involved around it, just strikes me that not every site may well be capable of running surface water into some sort of a system, particularly in urban areas. But anything that would help the problems that you've identified, and nobody knows better than me in relation to the Sicily area that you mentioned, anything that alleviates any of those problems is very welcome. And I understand what you're saying about the engineering and the construction that needs to go in around trying to alleviate the problems in the like of Sicily. I mean, that's a multi-million-pound exercise that's going to have to take place there to alleviate the problem. It may well be that it's the best method at the end of the day. I'm not knocking the method, but I'm just wondering what discussions you've had before you've reverted to paper, and I understand the consultation process and all the rest of it, but I assume you took some advice from somebody. Could you maybe share that with us?
Yes, this stormwater or sustainable drainage systems have been talked about for some time now. I've been in water 6.5 years, and since I've come in, it's been on the agenda. I actually I joined the chair of the Stormwater Management Group. It's an interdepartmental group with colleagues in Environment Agency, and that includes representatives from planning policy, from Northern Ireland Water, from River, from DARD, and DOE. And we've been looking at this issue, and we've been looking at a case study, a SPS case study, for instance, done for Ballyclare. Northern Ireland Water have done quite a bit of work in relation to their PC15 piece, looking at potential locations for sustainable drainage. This very estate here is a good example of an area where you could take potentially rainwater out of the system and reduce the loading on the sewage system going down Newtownards Road, for example. So we have had a number of discussions. One of the biggest challenges, I think, was for sustainable drainage systems. Now, maybe explain what a sustainable drainage systems are. They range, people have some, we're talking about a big pond. Sometimes it can range from effectively having a water butt in everybody's house, right through to having a large lake. Craigavon Lakes, for example, is effectively a sustainable drainage system. So it all depends how early on in the development stage or the planning stage. The more sustainable solution, the earlier in the stage. You don't want to get into the situation of retrofitting stuff afterwards because it's very, very expensive. But we have had the discussions. There is an NIA document that was published called Managing Stormwater. I think it was 2011. And it made a number of recommendations. And one of them was actually about removing the right to connect, because there's no incentive at this minute in time for developers to put sustainable drainage systems in. They have examples across the water have shown that they are cheaper. They can be substantially cheaper than traditional drainage. Now, if there's certain types of solutions, you're quite rightly, Chair, identified. It depends on the sites. A lot of this stuff's going to be on slightly larger sites. Certainly more than five properties. The photograph that we showed in the presentation showed how, at even the individual property level, the sustainable drainage can be built in. But one of the biggest challenges is maintenance and approval. At this minute in time, there's no body in Northern Ireland, unlike Scotland. So there's a SUDS approval body in Scotland, and I think it's in the councils, that whenever developers are going through the planning system, this body actually approves the plans, and then there is actually a company response. The councils then actually adopt these systems and look after them. These issues still need to be teased out, and that's why this is nearly an interim. In the early days, that's why we're limiting residential connections, not prohibiting them, because we do realise that there will be a period of time whereby these structures and who's going to approve these subsystems need to be clarified. Where the Stormwater Management Group that I mentioned, in the interim, we're examining whether this group, which has Rivers, Environment Agency, Northern Ireland Water, and ourselves on it, could actually act as a shadow approval body and only deal and look at the bigger developments, probably maybe more than 30 houses in the interim, until we see which types of systems are the best. And then DARD are proposing to do a floods bill, possibly in the next mandate, which might formalise some of these arrangements, which would hopefully include bringing the new local councils on board.
Our overall strategy, Chair, is to reduce stormwater coming into the sewage system, and as you've said, it won't be possible to do that through SUDS in every location. Part of the consultation objective is to tease out how we would manage that, so we don't impose an unreasonable burden on a developer, while at the same time we do get a bit of a push into developments, so that we start seeing this kind of arrangement being developed more widely. and where it's appropriate, and indeed, as Stuart said, in some cases it can be cheaper. Northern Ireland Water currently spends £34 million a year, their estimate, on just dealing with stormwater. That doesn't need to be in the sewage system at all. And that's the cost, and that's 20% of its operating cost. It's just dealing with rainwater that could quite properly be dealt with in another way, allowing it to soak away or flow into a holding lake or wherever and gradually be evaporated. So there is a big potential benefit out of this, and there will be other measures that we want to work with NI Water on developing. NI Water has put some money into its business plan for PC15 period to do work itself in sustainable drainage systems. What we're trying to do is join that up with the planning that the developer goes through, so that certainly they at least consider the SUDs, and that where appropriate that they would actually make that part of their development planning.
But would you agree that, and I think both of you have recognised that Stuart in particular, not every site will be
Absolutely.
suitable. You've recognised the unreasonable burden that could be put on, and that unreasonable burden moves from developer then to the person who's purchasing the property in terms of price or whatever. So I think it's important that the legislation makes it very clear that, although it has to be looked at, first and foremost, and I mean, I think all of us would probably welcome that if we can get rid of a lot of the surface water, but there has to be a recognition of unreasonable burden being put on people who may well be developing a site or whatever.
I think we recognise that, Chair, and would want to take that into consideration.
It's probably early days to be going into that minute detail, but I think it's important that some of these issues, if they're raised now, at least it gives us a bit of a head start. Just a couple of other things which I want to clarify in relation to the whole thing. When is the Budget Review Group expected to report on their findings regarding the Northern Ireland Water financial and governance arrangements? Is there any indication that might improve these arrangements?
We have no information on that. I've not been able to ascertain when that is expected.
It's just the fact that these arrangements, some of what may be their recommendations, may well improve or help to improve what you're doing at present.
If we had recommendations in the Budget Review Group, of course we would be wanting to adjust our planning to take account of that. At the moment, though, in the absence of any recommendation from the Budget Review Group, and given the timescale to get primary legislation through the Assembly, we need to be bringing forward that proposal now.
Just one final thing from me. Have the Department allowed, or do you believe the Department have allowed sufficient time for the committee stage of the bill, given that I think you referred to June next year, which would mean a consultation process over the summer months, which is not really ideal for a consultation process in terms of the committee stage. Perhaps it's a pretty tight frame around it in terms of that. Have you considered that?
We have considered, we had hoped, Chair, that we would have had some information from the Budget Review Group before now, of course, and in the absence of that, we've now gone ahead with the primary legislation proposals. We do believe that there is sufficient time given, and we've talked to the Office of Legislative Draftsman on this, and while it's not particularly desirable to have any consultation over a summer period or a recess period more properly, it's actually probably unavoidable in this case, if we're going to leave enough time for the committee to consider representations and so on.
Okay. To the members then, the Deputy Chair, Sean Lynch.
Thanks, Chair. In terms of bonds, and we would welcome discussion around the bonds, particularly after the inquiry we had. But some of your language is interesting, where you said could be required or rather than would be. What is the Department's position on making bonds compulsory?
So, sorry, my language didn't maybe make it clear. No, that it would be a requirement. The bond would be a requirement with the, in the future with our proposals. You will not be able to enter to get a connection. A developer won't be able to get a connection to the public sewage system unless they've entered into an adoption agreement. As part of that adoption agreement, that would include a surety bond. That would be a requirement, sorry, it would be a requirement, that could be.
And that's the change we're proposing, effectively.
Yeah, and I think it'd be reasonable that the level of bond would be sufficient to cover, you know, whatever the public monies would be. Now, what resistance have had use in relation to the bonds?
We understand that there may be opposition from representatives of the construction industry, but in discussions to date, it hasn't been clear that all developers would necessarily agree with that opposition. And that, again, is something we hope to test as part of this consultation. And we're actively attempting to identify areas where there have been difficulties so that we can make sure that the developers involved in those areas are provided with correct copies of the consultation paper and have a clear opportunity to make their comments known. But yes, we expect some.
And
developers to.
what would their arguments be, Robert? Would it be that it'd be a negative impact on the development?
There are a couple of arguments, and Stuart can help me on this, but part of the argument is that they have to borrow the money very often to put up to actually fund the development, but that includes the bond. And that means that money is tied up for some considerable time. In particular, the bond won't necessarily be released until some considerable time after the development has actually been completed, and they're obviously seeking to get their money returned to them as quickly as possible. So that's timing, and how all that works is one issue. The other issue, quite simply, is they may well argue to us that the level of the bond doesn't need to be as much as it is, and it could be released in part at earlier stages, as indeed happens elsewhere. So
A phased release?
perhaps the difficulty with the phased release is you don't really know the sewage system is working properly until it works. You know, so the fact that the pipes are in the ground doesn't necessarily prove that it's all done properly, and again, that's why the current bonding difficulties exist, because you find sometimes that the level of engineering work is inadequate, and clearly the money then isn't there if you've released the bond in advance. Again, it's a kind of complicated area, and we're very keen that we get into a proper debate, both with developers and with others, on how best to take it forward. We're open to that debate and open to that discussion. We don't want to put an unreasonable burden on developers. At the same time, we don't want public money having to come in as an emergency and pay for something that developers should have done.
It's really just worth mentioning that just to draw a distinction between road bonds and sewer bonds. Road bonds, 50% of the road bonds are released fairly early on in the process, effectively when the stone's down and the curbs are done, because the roads are happy that the sub-base of the road is satisfactory. The sewer bond can't be released until the whole system can effectively be tested. You can't do it, it's more difficult to do in phases, because you need to be sure that all the 100 houses in development are working, not just the first 20. So there's slightly different operational issues in terms of releasing the monies, which we could certainly look at and examine.
Yeah, I think we should prevent some of the disasters that happened previously.
Exactly.
Okay, thanks, Chair.
Eva McNary.
Thank you. You're welcome. What costs are involved in extending the current funding for the additional 12 months? And I'm talking about, have you done those costs? And what is your assessment that how the subsidy could be affected by delays on the welfare reform bill?
We haven't looked at the welfare reform bill at all, because we didn't see that there was an impact there on the level of subsidy, because the level of subsidy is calculated as the level of operating expenditure that Northern Ireland Water needs to run the business. It's not related to specific.
So just near terms, as we hear regularly, a lot of ministers concerned about the introduction of the welfare reform bill in terms of their money distribution, if you like, their budgets.
Well, obviously, I think our minister is equally concerned about his budget, but in relation to the specific subsidy calculation, the subsidy is calculated as the amount that would have been levied on domestic customers. But that amount is itself calculated on the basis of what Northern Ireland Water needs to provide the service.
I appreciate that, but what I'm trying to get at is, are you telling us that the subsidies, come hell or high water, whatever happens with the welfare reform bill or anything, the subsidies are untouchable? In other words, you and your minister are not going to dip in to find some compensation funding from these subsidies. That's that's what I'm saying, because that's what I'm asking, what's the costs about for the
I
extension?
think I've approached slightly. I can't say that because I am not in the position where I have the power to take that decision as to how the department's finances are allocated, and that will be presumably a discussion that can be raised with our finance colleagues. What I would say in relation to the subsidy, it's currently running at about £280 million a year. So that's the amount that comes through direct subsidy. This provision is about extending the power to continue that funding. There is a more general point. I'm not trying to evade your question about the amount of money that Northern Ireland Water would need over in future years to fund its business. And I think that's a concern that we would acknowledge if there isn't adequate funding available, whether that lack of funding is caused by the Welfare Reform Bill or anything else. There is a concern there, particularly, I would say, well, on both the operating cost side and on the capital side.
Well, okay, just maybe to satisfy me, but have you any contingency in place that you might be thinking, in case something happened with the Welfare Reform Bill, where the department, shall we say, needed to make some reductions?
The department has considered that and has developed a number of contingency arrangements, and NI Water has been part of that consideration.
And is water subsidy exempt?
It's not a question of water subsidy. It's about what work doesn't get taken forward and about essentially it's about what work Northern Ireland doesn't take forward, or indeed any other part of the department isn't able to take forward because the funding isn't there. It's not, being probably a bit pedantic, it's not a point about the subsidy, it's about what you can't do because there isn't enough money to put in.
I appreciate that. Just finally, Chairman, if I may, regarding the utility regulator, have you had talks with the regulator to ascertain their opinion on introducing this mandatory strategic social and environmental direction, as opposed to this change that you're perhaps proposing?
We have had a discussion. In fact, I've had several discussions with the regulator on the water side about the proposal, and we understand that there are issues there regarding the regulator's independence and so on. We fully expect the regulator will be putting in a reasoned submission as part of the consultation process. So we've not sought to reach agreement with the regulator on it. We simply alerted the regulator to the proposal that we were putting into the consultation paper. And I should say, and Stuart didn't pick it up in the presentation, that this has already been done in England and Wales, so it's not entirely a surprise to the regulator over here.
I see that. It just bears out what the Chairman was saying about the timescale that you're affording this committee, because I'm sure if the regulator had certain opinions that the committee might also want to hear from him, so I'm sure provision will be made for that in due course.
We would anticipate that. Could I also say as a general proposition, Chair, that the only proposal in our consultation paper that is time-driven is the need to extend the subsidy arrangements, because without that there is no mechanism for paying money to NIW. The other proposals, if there were delay, will clearly would need to consider the position in the bill.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Alex Easton.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Thanks for your presentation. You mentioned about private residential, and the sewer's been a standard size. Is that what you said? Yeah.
What the proposals will apply to basically developments that, this includes the connection proposals and the surface water proposal developments of 5 or more dwellings. That applies, road service also apply that to do a private street. It's just you're getting down effectively, you don't want to have a scenario where you would have a large house changed into an apartment block and suddenly you have to adopt the driveway and the sewer surface, so there is limitations. The same thing applies to wastewater treatment, in that when you get down to that sort of scale, you're really talking about a large septic tank as opposed to a treatment facility. So it's just that would apply to all the proposals. There are limitations to get down to very, very small size developments.
Okay. Going on to extension of the subsidy. It says on the presentation, the Water Framework Directive promotes household charging to encourage water efficiency. What do you mean household charging?
Article 9 of the Water Framework Directive, by 2010 member states were to have water pricing arrangements in that incentivise efficient water use. You can interpret that whichever way you want, but that for the water pricing is effectively a charging regime that incentivizes incentive sustainable water use.
The logic in the Water Framework Directive is that if a consumer has to pay for the quantity of water that they use, then that will inevitably lead to consumer considering how they can use less water, and that's how that logic works. In Northern we've gone halfway. We have a pricing mechanism which is managed by the regulator, but public money funds it, so that incentive doesn't currently exist on the consumer.
So you're putting that in place for the potential of creating water charges? Is that why this is happening?
No. In effect, we're proposing to continue the subsidy so that we would not be introducing water charges within. This is to ensure that the Programme for Government commitment not to introduce water charges during this mandate can be met, because otherwise the provision to fund the NI Water through subsidy would run out before the end of the mandate.
Okay, so the one-year extension allows you to do that so that the Assembly can consider its approach to charging.
Precisely.
So you've had this discussion with the Minister about possible charging down the line?
I think it would be wrong to say that. I mean, what we've had the discussion with the Minister about is the need to extend the current arrangements to meet the commitment of the Programme for Government. Basically, as I understand it, it's the Budget Review Group that has been mandated to consider the issue of future water charges, and we await the outcome of that group's consideration.
Yeah, but the Minister's had discussions with you on this?
Any discussion we've had with the Minister about water charges to date has been about the need to extend the subsidy,
Right.
To make sure that the Programme for Government commitment is met. Beyond that, again, I think our Minister is awaiting the outcome of the Budget Review Group's consideration.
Okay, and what's your opinion about charging? Do you think it should?
I think that's an unfair question.
Just about to suggest that, sir. Thank you.
That's a political
What
decision.
would
It's
answer
totally
required?
unfair to ask the officials.
The reference to the Water Framework Directive was in there simply to highlight that we couldn't extend the remit 5 years, say, because that would be sending a clear message to Europe that charges weren't coming in.
Okay, well, water charges is not a good idea. Anyway, thank you, Chair.
Okay, Declan McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. See, in relation to the bonds, you're making reference to one of the provinces is making sure adoption agreements prerequisites. How do you propose to deal with partially completed sewers in private developments where the developer has gone bust and there's no sewer, the bond isn't adequate?
The proposals, very good question, the proposals are very much about making sure the situation doesn't get any worse in the future. So they're not going to address the legacy issue. They are for PC15, and I understand Northern Ireland Water coming up next week, or 2 weeks' time on PC15. Going forward, we're proposing through social environmental guidance that there will be a programme. Northern Water will have a programme that they can start going round and addressing this. I'll emphasise it's a long programme, but addressing these problematic sites. But it's separate to this.
And can I highlight that actually it's one of the reasons we're wanting to take this forward now, because we don't want to be saying, okay, it's all right, NI Water will come and pay for all of that in the end. We want it to be a prerequisite that it's got done right, and then it's only the legacy areas where the problem exists that pragmatically, because there's no other way of fixing it, that Northern Ireland Water may pick up some of the cost of that. But that can't be done quickly because the cost to do it all at once would be very significant. That's why this is quite important, that we draw a line and prevent the problem occurring in the future.
Chair, do you see one of the suggestions in the inquiry which was carried out by this committee was that in conjunction with NILGA that DRD would complete a prioritisation audit. Has there any progress been made on that there audit?
I'd have to come back to you. I think Road Service have been working with, or Transport and I have been working with NILGA to carry out such a review, and I think there's probably an update. If it hasn't went to the executive or to the committee, I think there was an update to come back to the committee. But we can check and we'll come back to you on that.
Good. Chair.
Okay, John Ballard.
Chairperson, thanks for your presentation. Representative Larson, earlier I'm very mindful that there are many houses out there who are not connected, but who would wish to be connected in the future. how will this affect them in terms of separated drainage water and sewage? And I'm thinking of your unique bungalows that are tarmacked and all that. You know, are they going to have to be ripped up, separated, all that stuff?
Really, I'm sure I can elaborate on this, but basically we're looking at new development of a significant size, primarily as the target for separated systems. If you have an individual householder who wants to connect, and all of that work's already been done, and really it will be the same as at present, and it will be through the cost allowance, whether or not that person wishes to pay the additional money required to connect over and above the cost allowance that NI Water will buy. So I think I'd say that may be a different issue to be picked up separately, but there's nothing in our proposals today that would be affecting that situation.
Well, no, I suppose, Chairperson, that's probably why we have the opportunity to ask questions.
Absolutely.
That will be the unforeseen will arise in the future. And when you talk to anyone in the rural community and hear about connection charges, I mean, for first-time buyers and builders, they're already outrageous. Being charged thousands of pounds for a half-inch water connection. So it really, what I'm completely at sea about is what are the cost implications for people in the future, not just the new builds, but those who may, under European legislation, may be compelled in the future to abandon their septic tanks and connect to the new systems.
It might perhaps, Chair, be better and to give you a better answer if we were to come prepared to deal with that when we're with the committee on the 18th on our long-term water strategy.
Chairperson, I would humbly ask your endorsement that we do that, because I'm mindful that this is a major issue in the Republic of Ireland.
Well, the officials are coming on the 18th, and I think that we can cover that point.
Give us the opportunity.
That's grand, thanks.
Okay, Joe Byrne.
Chairman, again, thanks for the presentation. In relation to the annual subvention of the 280 million, is that the total of revenue and capital?
That's the total. It's broken down in 2013-14 is approximately, subject to audit, these figures are 187 million in terms of revenue operating expenditure and 164 million pounds in capital expenditure. And I say those figures are subject to audit. The accounts are being prepared at the moment.
Thanks. And secondly, Chairman, in relation to the 34 million spent on the surface water processing that goes into the wastewater storage system, how much has that gone up in recent years? You know, is that a fixed figure, or is that a movable feast, or what is it?
I don't.
It will go up.
It's
very much linked to power costs and treatment costs and chemical costs, but it will go up year on year with power costs.
Just to take a simple Bagman situation, let's say a developer builds 200 houses. What's the savings that you guys would envisage as a result if they had this new surface water treatment process?
I don't have a figure, with us for that, but we can obviously pick it up and write to the committee and give you that information. We have envisaged that's the kind of detailed calculation we'll be doing during the consultation period, because clearly the point you're making is that we need to know whether it makes value for money sense and at what size of development that will actually be appropriate.
Yeah, it's certainly a very site-specific matter, and it's really not a case of one size fits all. But it's probably worthwhile noting as well that the likes of the sustainable drainage systems can increase public amenity within the development. They tend to look pleasant and pretty green spaces. There are more benefits than purely in terms of drainage. You also have your public amenity benefits too.
But we'll do some work on that, Chair, and obviously report back when we come back to the committee after consultation. But the point that Louise is making there, and the point already picked up, some areas, for example, hard clay, drainage is not going to be a very good option. You need to look at something different. So I appreciate the question. We'll follow it up.
Chairman, just to make reference to Cicely Park, we have our own Cicely Park in Flintlow last week. The same problem. We had a cloudburst almost, and surface water caused massive flooding. Thanks, Chairman.
Okay, Joe. Cackle O'Hashton.
Thank you, Chair. Keep practicing.
That good on it? We're getting there.
Another 400 years, maybe. You might learn the language.
I can wait that length of time, that'll do me all right.
Classes, you know.
I've nearly forgotten what I'm going to say now. 20% of rainwater that currently goes into the sewage system, and obviously has to be treated as a fairly substantial cost. I take it that's an average figure, because I know that in many towns and villages the entire system is virtually combined. So, proposals to actually limit surface water coming from residential developments, or indeed to prohibit surface water coming from non-residential developments, that's really quite impractical. Will you agree on?
Well, really, what you're right in what you're saying in terms of, even though since the sort of 80s, all new developments have been separated, where those developments basically join the main road, you find the separate storm pipe inevitably ends up back into the old combined system. It's effectively, one of the challenges is not making the situation get any worse. There's several consequences. The additional stormwater going into the system, not all of it makes its way through the treatment works. The way this combined sewage system is designed, it will spill out.
Yeah.
So you end up with potentially pollution, you end up potentially with flooding, and you end up also with higher treatment costs. I pick up your point in terms of, yes, there will be areas that are prone to flooding, and it will not be practical. The surface water has to go somewhere, and sometimes it might require a pump and a pipe. We recognise that, particularly through the areas highlighted through Rivers Agency's maps. There will be areas that they're low-lying areas where you basically will have to pump the water out of those areas. So we recognise, yes, back to Louise's point, it will be site-specific.
So that's one of a number of solutions. And the three critical problems facing NI Water in terms of, facing us rather, in relation to wastewater at the moment, are how do you get a system of sewerage and wastewater so that supports economic growth? How do you protect the environment properly and avoid infraction? And how do you prevent flooding? And SUDS will be a contribution towards that. There still needs, we think, to be significant investment in traditional solutions on top of that.
But there has been a huge investment in recent years in wastewater treatment plants,
Yes.
particularly in smaller rural areas. It seems to be you're standing at the end of the sewer pipe rather than the top of the sewer pipe in terms of dealing with this issue. And there are, I know that certainly some of the villages and towns in my constituency, there are issues where there is extreme weather, that you do have environmental issues right across, sewage get across streets and go into the environment and elsewhere. So that hasn't been really addressed as such as this year when you've got
And I
limitations.
think I would acknowledge that the level of funding currently available to NIW doesn't allow that to be addressed, and we perhaps pick this up in 2 weeks, Chair, but the simple fact is that at the end of the PC21 period, NI Water will have dealt with about 19 wastewater treatment works, when in fact the total they need to deal with is something more of the order 70, 80. And it's a simple fact that is, you're absolutely right, that is a problem, and it will continue to be a problem.
Thank you, Chair.
Kieran McCarthy.
Yeah, thanks very much for your presentation. Again, going back to the surface separation, we spoke about this the last time you were here, if I remember. But nowhere in your plan is there anything about recycling. Is there? I mean, resurfaced water, rainwater, and the term was used to get rid of it. Surely we should be thinking in some way of recycling it and reusing it and saving money somewhere.
Well, when I talk about sustainable drainage, it's a range of measures. It goes from green roofs, rainwater harvest and recycling, grey water recycling, right through to having a large lake in a new development. So, I say the emphasis, as mentioned earlier, is the earlier you can influence the development, the more opportunity you have. Rainwater recycling is very expensive, but if you're retrofitting it to existing properties, whereas if you build it into your design early on, I totally support what you're saying. So those recycling systems can be factored in.
Can I also say that, and we may be in a position to give more detail on this 2 weeks from now, our Minister is very, very keen on developing greater sustainable approaches, including recycling, and has asked for some work to be done on demonstrations of that and how that could be taken forward. So I'm not in a position to give more detail today, but I would hope that in 2 weeks from now we might be able to give you some more briefing on that. I know we're adding, Chair, to the briefing for the 18th, but I'm very happy to pick up these points and give people more detail if that would be helpful.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, thanks, Chair.
Okay, just one final point, just to clarify. Are you required to clear these proposals through the EU Commission in relation to It's Article 9 in relation to incentivisation under Article 9(1) of the Water Framework Directive. Do you have any issues around
Already respond, not for the extension, but we have already responded. We had this part of the river-based management plans in 2009 that DOE had published. We had to provide the current summary of how water and sewer services are currently funded in Northern Ireland, and that was published. And then the Commission came back, I think it was 2012, to confirm that the current situation, that there was no domestic household charges, and we reaffirmed that. So the Commission is aware of the matter. We don't, and the current subsidy arrangement, ongoing subsidy arrangement.
We're content we don't need to clear them for an extension. We do anticipate that the Commission will ask us again at some point in the near future, at which point we'll explain what we've done. I think the point we had earlier, Mr. Stewart, is that while we may look for a power to have a rolling extension until such time as we no longer need that, if that comes, that is likely to be something the Commission will focus on. You're absolutely right.
Okay, Robert, Stuart, Louise, thank you very much indeed for the presentation today, and no doubt you're going to be back with us on this very subject in the not too distant future.
Thank you very much.
So thank you, meantime. Just while we're changing the top table, can I welcome Katrina, who's here on work experience. Katrina, I think you're sitting in the back row. You're very welcome. Mr. O'Hashin.
Thank you, Chair.
That's the... Two or three passes, Jimmy, and sort it all out.
Well. Okay, we move members in. Page 141 of your electronic packs, a departmental briefing on off-street parking, functions of district councils bill, and I'm going to ask the officials to come forward. Can I welcome Terry Deegan, the Acting Director of Corporate Services, DRD, David Miller, the Head of Land and Legislation Branch, DRD, Sean McConnell, the Acting Head of Parking Enforcement Unit, DRD, and Jerry Antel, who is the Bill Team Leader of DRD. You're all very welcome. Most of you no strangers to the committee. So can I ask you to go ahead and make a presentation and then leave yourself open for questions. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chair. Not rehash all the introductions. I'm Terry Deegan. I'm the Acting Director of Corporate Services. Can I just say thank you to the committee for the opportunity to brief the committee on the bill, and also thank you for availing or allowing us to avail of this opportunity, given that it's very short notice that the bill has been brought to you, and thanks to the clerk for arranging this. We've already done any introductions. I'm going to cover a brief background on the RPA process and the context of the proposal, which is to issue for consultation a bill to transfer and share powers in relation to off-street car parking with the 11 new district councils. Jerry Anketel is the acting bill team leader from the department, and Jerry is going to explain the legislative background and the process to introduce the primary legislation required. Davy Miller is Head of Lands and Legislation for Transport NI, and Davy will describe the assets being transferred and how that will be achieved through the Local Government 2014 Act. And finally, Sean McConnell is the Head of Parking Enforcement Unit in Transport NI, and Sean will outline the operational arrangements we're putting in place in agreement with the councils to provide the service post-April 2015. I hope that will provide an overview of the bill, and there'll be an opportunity for us to answer your questions at the end. I'll not rehearse the history of RPA from pre-devolution 2005 to April 2013. I'm sure you'll be glad. 10 years. Might be painful enough. Other than to point out that some salient points, and perhaps the most important being that a briefing on a previous roads function of district councils bill as part of the previous RPA process was provided to this committee in January 2010 and subsequently consulted upon, and that's the reason why our consultation proposes a relatively short 6-week consultation period. That bill was subsequently withdrawn, mainly due to lack of progress on the RPA system itself, and the fact that it was impractical to devolve the power to 26 local councils. The second thing then, by way of context, is that the scope of the functions transferring has reduced. The current proposals, as announced in April 2013, are singularly to transfer off-street parking, excluding park and ride and park and share, to councils. And finally, that the package would be reviewed as part of the executive proposals. That the package would be of proposals to transfer would be reviewed in April 2016 with a view to extending those functions transferring. So to summarise in terms of the context of the bill, this is primary legislation. It's required to enact what is an executive policy, and Jerry will cover as I say, the legislative requirements. The content of that policy has been subject to engagement with the RPA delivery structures, which have a political input at their various levels, and with district council officials, normally at chief executive level, in the RPA working groups. And Davy will outline some of the transfer proposals in terms of the assets transferring. And finally, the operational arrangements will be subject to in-depth arrangements with the shadow councils, and Sean's going to cover that aspect. And that will be subject to an SLA, a service level agreement, probably with councils, which will cover the detailed, as you can imagine, there's a lot of detail in the operational arrangements of car parking. So that's basically the context. I'll pass you on to Jerry to talk about the legislative aspects.
Thanks, Terry. Chairman, as Terry has already alluded to, the proposals contained in the bill were the subject of discussions with the Transfer of Functions Working Group and with the technical subgroup dealing with roads under the general RPA structure. So there have been meaningful discussions certainly along the way. Simply put, the bill seeks to introduce the wishes of the executive to transfer off-street parking responsibility to the new councils. It has a single clause, and it proposes that councils would in the future have powers to provide off-street parking places. Councils will become the owners and operators of the off-street parking places other than the park and ride and park and share places. The councils would operate and maintain those parking places, and they would be responsible for enforcement of parking contraventions within them. So councils would have powers to employ traffic attendants. They would have the powers to deliver parking enforcement services in those off-street parking places. They will have the power to process penalty charge notices, to maintain and operate the off-street car parks, to provide new off-street car parks or to dispose of existing ones. They would have responsibility for setting the tariffs, and they would have responsibility for the penalty charge notice income and the car parking income. So from a legislative perspective, what the bill would do would be to transfer to the new councils certain powers under the Road Traffic Regulation Order of 1997, which presently enable the Department to provide for parking off-street parking places. And it would essentially share with councils certain powers under the Traffic Management Order of 2005, which would allow councils to apply the decriminalised parking enforcement system that is already in place through the department. Terry mentioned a shorter period of consultation, and that's taking into account the earlier consultation on the Roads, Functions and District Councils Bill, in which these proposals were contained. So essentially we would be consulting the usual parties, including the existing councils, the shadow councils, the chairpersons of the regional transition committees, Section 75 groups, and obviously the Northern Ireland departments. So, Chair, we would hope that we would be in a position to introduce the bill to the Assembly in September of this year, and members may have noted that the date of operation to coincide with RPA would be the 1st of April 2015. So, pass on to David.
Chair, with regard to the mechanism for transferring assets, the Local Government Act provides for the transfer schemes to be put in place by any department, transferring assets and liabilities to the 11 new councils. The transfer schemes are the formal documentation that we will use to transfer off-street car parks to each of the new councils, together with the associated easements, wayleaves, and any relevant equipment such as the pay and display machines, street lighting, etc. The transfer scheme is just basically a legal document which is signed under seal between the department and each of the councils, and it'll list all the car parks that are transferring together with the title, the types of title, and any contracts associated with the car park. DOE will also be making similar transfer schemes to transfer assets and liabilities from the outgoing 26 councils to the new 11 councils. The transfer of car parks and associated equipment will be cost neutral at the point of transfer to the new councils, with DFP responsible for the necessary financial arrangements and implications. Work is almost complete, and it's been a big exercise on the gathering of all the necessary information on some 338 car parks transferring in order to inform the transfer schemes. Some of the new councils have already received preliminary information on the car parks that's transferring to them, and to allow them to carry out their own internal works and preparation. And the information being gathered has been reviewed by Deloitte, who were appointed by the Transfer and Functions Working Group, carried a due diligence exercise. The aim is that all those car parks transferring will transfer with effect from the 1st of April 2015.
Chair, just on the actual operation itself, the current situation is that we're working very closely with the Transfer Functions Work Group to decide with them, to help them decide how enforcement and processing will take place come the 1st of April 2015. There are two options as we see it. The councils may decide to carry out enforcement and processing themselves, or they may ask DRD Transport NI to provide the service for them. The second option, we believe, will be best delivered in a service level agreement, and at this stage we have drafted a generic service level agreement that will be presented to the Transfer Functions Work Group on next Monday as part of the discussion paper. Depending on how that is received, then we move forward. But there has been no decision yet made by the shadow councils on whether or not they will do enforcement themselves or the mayor is going to do it for them.
Why should they not do it? They already carry out enforcement.
I think the difficulty is that there is quite a complex IT system behind the legislation that they would probably have to go through procurement at this present moment in time. We have that all in place. We possibly could offer them something a lot cheaper than them going into 11 procurement exercises.
A bit of job protection going on?
Absolutely not.
How can you assure me of that?
So we've discussed with them in the transfer of functions work group, give them the full detail of the process of enforcement and processing of penalty charge notices. And the group themselves, the transfer of functions work group, before the shadow chief executive designates came on board, were of the opinion that this was the best value for money that they could provide by BRD doing it.
Best value of money for the ratepayer?
For the ratepayer.
Be interesting to see. I'll just ask that question. Is that the presentation? Thank you very much. Maybe one or two issues. First of all, just clear, will the committee have the opportunity to assess the consultation responses before the introduction of the bill in September, given that we have a summer recess?
Chair, we would be more than happy to provide the clerk with the responses that we received. We had a similar approach in the road races amendment bill, and it seemed to work very well.
It worked very well. So we could have sort of those responses as they come in, so that the clerk's office can have a look at them, and if there's any issues, those issues could be highlighted, because you're right that the process for the road races worked excellent in relation to that.
I suspect we may not have just quite as many responses on this.
Yeah. Just in terms of the assurances that central government, the land being transferred from central government will remain in public ownership, what safeguards are built around that? So that a local authority couldn't, or district council couldn't auction off a prime piece of land, because sometimes in town centres, city centres, etc., these car parks are prime pieces of land, which would be very advantageous to sell off. So where do we have the safeguards built in to make sure that the public purse is protected?
Well, the car parks have been transferred to the council, so the ownership of the council, so it's their sole responsibility to manage them and deal with them as best.
So they could sell them off?
So they could scale them up. But in saying that, we're already aware that DSD has identified a number of the off-street car parks or situated in town centres as key to regeneration of town centres. And certainly a number of councils are already looking at the car parks in relation to their regeneration proposals for their town centres. And as part of that regeneration, you know, if you're putting a new facility in, then you have to provide alternative car parking facilities. So as regards to providing an alternative or the same level of car parking, that will be taken into account as a planning application comes forward for these regeneration proposals. But they are key, they're deemed key by both DSD and the local councils to the regeneration proposals of the various towns across the.
So in terms of all of the liabilities around car parks, they will all transfer, all of the public liabilities, all of the maintenance liabilities, everything in relation to all of that will transfer automatically, and if you like, the central government public purse will not have any strain on it in relation to any of those issues.
Yep.
So, Chair, the department would remain responsible for any liability claims arising up to the 31st of March 2015, and then from the 1st of April, anything arising on and forward from that date will fall to the councils.
Okay. Well, just let me go back to the enforcement issue. And I know that there's a contract running to sometime in 2016 for the red coats. I suspect that there'll be a reduced requirement for red coats in the future if the councils employ their own staff in relation to it. Will that mean a reduced burden on the public purse for on-street parking?
We would see it as a two-way issue, that the reduced number of red coats would eventually go across to the councils that would do enforcement.
But I mean, why should it if it's a commercial contract that the department has with a private company? Why would Chupi come into it?
Well, the function still remains of car park enforcement, and provided the council still require enforcement and still want to employ attendants, then our advice from DSO is that there is a should be requirement.
So the private company scores in terms of holding on to their contract? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, the contract remains in place to 2016, and it would be a reduced number of traffic attendants if the councils decide that they want to go on enforcement on their own. Now, there also is a requirement that the cost, the function is continuing. The function of car park enforcement is continuing, albeit done by someone else, being the council in this stage. Then they would take across the attendance and would be responsible for all terms of employment.
But after 2016, the possibility is, I mean, I assume the council's hands, district council's hands, are not going to be tied in terms of retaining staff whenever they could perhaps get a cheaper contract with a local company, maybe in a particular district council area or whatever. We're not tying the hands of the district councils, are we?
Not after 2016. After 2016, we have a situation that our contract with NSL is due for review, and at that stage, if the councils were going alone, I would expect that we would come back to NSL as part of the renegotiation, because it's a 10-year contract.
Well, I mean, NSL, I assume that the department's not going to be meddling in the affairs of district councils come April 2015.
No, the councils will have the option of opting out of enforcement.
So you're not meddling in who's employed or anything else. Is that what you're telling me?
We're not. But in discussion with councils, we have given them the opportunity and the option, and the majority of councils, in fact, the working groups have recommended that councils take up that option to piggyback on our contract until 2016, to allow councils to put alternative arrangements, should they wish to, in place, or continue with that arrangement beyond 2016.
Well, I mean, this contract
it's completely up to councils.
The contract that's presently in place is not a cheap contract. And of course, red coats aren't the flavour of the month in quite a few parts of the province.
But it was competitive.
Including my own Lisburn Road area. But I had.
Particularly.
Particularly. So, you're assuring us that council's hands won't be tied by having to employ who the department might have in the future as the enforcers for on-street parking?
Correct.
The decision of the councils it's very much their decision what way they want to carry out enforcement.
And will that be clear in the bill, Jerry?
The bill doesn't mention that at all, Chair. It's absolutely nothing in the bill that deals with that. The bill focuses entirely on the transfer of the powers.
It could be a bit dangerous, couldn't it?
I don't think so, Chairman.
Well, we'll see. The Deputy Chair, Sean Lynch.
Just a quick question, man. In terms of the tariffs, will each council be able to set their own tariffs, and how consistent would that be across the board?
Again, that's a decision for the council. The legislation allows the council to set their own tariffs, and there's no requirement from the department to decide what the level of the tariffs are, or even to manage or monitor.
So you could have differences between different councils, different levels of tariffs?
Absolutely.
Okay. David McNary.
Well, this is good fun. This really just looks like an idea, no disrespect to you, gentlemen, whom I have the utmost respect, that some idiot has hatched up to say, let's give these super councils something to justify their blooming existence. And you've picked on this, and you see what they've, it's clear what they've ditched out. The beneficiaries of the revenue from the car parking are the councils. So the ratepayers will benefit immensely from this amount of money that they, the ratepayers, are probably spending in their own car parks, but they're the overall beneficiaries. Who sets the pricing policy for the car parks in the future? In other words, what they inherit Who will set that policy?
Councils.
Councils themselves.
And they can do it individually, they're not being asked to do it collectively. So there's no, just go ahead, councils, do whatever you like.
Well, they're accountable to their own ratepayers.
They're accountable to who?
To their own ratepayers.
Every 4 years, if they're lucky. This idea that the chairman handed over, or mentioned about this handing over the transfer of land assets, I heard your answers, but you actually say that the bill itself is saying the proposals will be cost neutral. How do you figure that out? What is the cost or the value of all these car parks that you're handing over?
I think DFP are taking forward the financial arrangements, but our understanding of it at the minute is that DFP will adjust for those councils. Say if a council, it's not only the revenue will transfer to the councils, but the costs as well of car parks maintenance,
We've
etc.
dealt with the revenue now, let's stick with the asset. This is cost neutral. I'd like you to explain that because I can't understand, because there's nowhere I can see what is the value of all these car parks, the land. In my own constituency, if the chairman would indulge me, of our Kieran's constituency also, Kieran, I forgot about that. In the beautiful Stankford constituency, what is the value of the assets being handed over in car parks to the new super council?
I haven't got a value per constituency, but...
Does anybody have? I mean, can you get it for us?
We can provide it, yes.
So, that's being handed over for free.
Cost neutral at the point of transfer, yes.
So it's cost neutral in the language of this bill. So I must look for cost neutral to be exactly the same in future bills.
Well, the bill doesn't mention that. I think we explain in the explanatory forward to the bill.
Yes.
But the bill is really just concerned with the transfer of powers. It's DFP who will make arrangements.
Forgive me,
to transfer
it does have to be concerned with the value. In the briefing we've got, it says cost neutral. With all due respect, whoever wrote that should go and rewrite it, or give an explanation of cost neutral. We're talking, I would think, about a considerable amount of money. And in the bill, again taking up the chairman's point of view, there's nothing to stop. You were saying, Davy, about the council saying, hang on here, we're going to sell this bit of land here, whatever. Do you think it might be appropriate that you might put in for the next 5-10 years a clause that prohibits the council from doing that? That it might be worthwhile to say to the ratepayers, here's your gift for car parking. We'd like you to hold on to it, and you're going to get some money out of it for revenue anyhow, and it's worth so much money. But for the next 5 years, there's a provision that says you can't flog it. Do you think that might be worthwhile for the bill to include?
But I suppose for the department, all we're doing is enacting, for the officials, all we're doing is enacting what the executive's will is. The executive's will is the councils will be responsible for off-street car parks for whatever they want to do with them.
In other words, what you're really saying is you're carrying out the executive's instructions. No matter how stupid these instructions are, in my opinion, you're just carrying them out. Doesn't matter what they say, we're just going to proceed with this. So perhaps members in this committee might have an opportunity to look at that and correct that bit. If I may, could I just ask about these Darth Vader enforcers that are circulating the place? Will they? Will any of them be made redundant as a result of the transfer, or is it just going to be the same? In other words, there's no reduction in the numbers, there's no increase in the numbers, they're just going to be the same because there's a contract?
The current situation is that we're in initial discussions with it's going to be now the shadow councils and the chief executive designates. And depending on what they decide, how enforcement is carried out, you may have a situation of a transfer across to them if they decide they want to do it themselves. If they decide that enforcement is to become zero in one district council area or more than one, then you may have a situation where traffic attendant numbers will be reduced. But until we get into the finer detail with them of exactly what each shadow council wants to do, we really can't answer that question.
But it's not likely to be a franchise operation. I mean, the people who enforce it, obviously, are the people who get the money for enforcing it. But are they going to pay a percentage to the councils? Is it some kind of franchise, this contract? And why couldn't the councils operate their own enforcers? And that's why I was asking the question about redundancies, mainly in these changes.
If the councils decide to operate their own enforcement team, then obviously NSL and their contract will have to be changed, and there will be reductions, transfers across. But our understanding is that if the councils want to carry out their own enforcement, there is a requirement of them to begin a TUPE process.
Unless we have the figures to hand, maybe through our very able staff, would it be in order, would you be able to supply the revenue collection that these enforcers brought in each of the car parks that we're talking about? The reason I'm asking for that is you know, again, coming back to cost neutral, that is a very valuable business somebody's running, and good luck to them if they've got a contract for it. But this now is going to be ratepayers. So I think the ratepayers would like to know how much, it's not obviously costing them anything if they're hiring it out, but how much are the fines in total over the past 3 years? So we can
That information be supplied?
We can supply information.
For each car park, of the 338 car parks?
Supply information along, yeah.
Okay, well, we will require that. The clerk will write to you in relation to that.
That's very helpful, and thank you.
Okay, Joe Byrne.
Yeah, Chairman, again, I welcome the presentation, and I think it's the first issue that has cropped up in relation to transfer of functions, which is really an interesting discussion. Obviously, there are 338 car parks. Has any breakdown been done on the revenue income that comes into each of them, and what that is likely to be for each of the new super councils? But I think...
Well, we're going to get that information. Yeah.
Chair, I think it should be pointed out that not all of these car parks are charged car parks. There's some of them free, so your reply will be a lot of them zero.
Well, I mean, if you can tell us which ones are the free car parks and which ones aren't,
yeah.
Because I want to come with whenever all the members have had a say, I want to clarify some issues. Joe.
And lastly, Chairman, the service level agreement that has been hinted at, has much work been done in relation to that? Has a costing been done on the service level agreement that may be possible with DRD enforcement unit?
It's an initial draft at the present moment in time. We're going as a discussion document, but you have to remember is before we even get down that road, there has to be an acknowledgement by the councils that they actually want us to engage in this operation. So we're probably preparing steps ahead, just in case they decide to ask us to carry out enforcement for the period of October 2016.
I think reference made earlier was a delight. They do some sort of a computation. You said that some of the accountancy firms have been asked to do something in terms of the costing.
Yes, Deloitte have prepared a report for the RPA Transfer Functions Working Group that was a due diligence report and looked at the validating the costs and the revenues for the car parks transferring, so that they were able to stand over the figures that BRD were providing in terms of the car parks and their costs and revenues.
So Deloitte got those figures obviously from the department?
Yes.
Do we have those figures as well?
Okay, Chairman, thanks.
Okay, John Ballard.
Thanks, Chairman. I apologise for being out.
Are you okay?
As you know, we go out occasionally speak to people from different parts of the world to tell us what wonderful we are here. That's what I was doing. These councils that are taken over, some of them are probably going to get very nice modern car parks, which are automated and all the rest of it. There's others. There's nothing. So where did they begin to create some kind of level car parking provision across Northern Ireland?
Well, all the car parks in the minute are fit for purpose, and they have to be fit for purpose in order to defend property public liability claims.
All right.
But they are all different standards, you know.
Just
there's
thinking
the lining and
whatever you call it, and there's others. That
It's
are
one of the
arguing.
things the council have asked for is condition surveys, and our engineers are preparing a report to hand over to the councils to show the condition surveys. But they are of different standards, but they are all fit for purpose. The maintenance in the car parks hasn't stopped just because we're transferring them over. So any maintenance planned or works planned or refurbishment planned or the relining, it'll all take place as normal in order to keep them up to fit for purpose standards, and then we'll transfer over.
In England, I see the county councils have overall responsibility for the administration in terms of collecting the parking fines. You pay them on web and all that stuff. And then the local councils presumably make their own individual choices about either free or charge. And, is that what might happen here?
Yes.
You're the county council, you've got the computer system. Is that what's envisaged?
Yep.
What we have suggested to the councils is that we have that service in place.
Yes.
Where you can look at your penalty charge notes online, you can decide to pay it. We're actually introducing very shortly an opportunity where you can appeal and challenge online and do all of those things. So that's all in place. What we're suggesting to the shadow councils is that if they want that facility, we can work with them in partnership to deliver that, if that's what they particularly want.
And is there provision for variations in that? You know, Causeway might have a penalty charge of £25, the West might be £50, or is that all feasible and possible?
Everything, once the councils get the asset transferred, they can charge as they particularly wish, and we have the capacity to adopt our systems to allow those charges, as you suggest, 45 to 20.
The enforcement section, or at least part of it's in County Hall and Coleraine. How many people are employed there?
There's 11 people currently employed in processing.
Well, that's one good reason for supporting that, Chairperson.
Well, I was sort of thinking along the lines of there's a service level agreement. Would it be an opportunity for the DRD Minister to transfer another 50 posts up to Coleraine to save some of the jobs up there?
The other departments do that.
Well, we currently have 25 posts in Oma. And the second side of the process, dealing with challenges and all of the appeals, even up the length of debt collection. They manage all the debt collection. Coleraine offices deal with all our telephone inquiries, the clamp and removal, and all the vehicle licensing issues that we have in relation to trying to trace vehicles. So it's spread across those two areas, plus we have an office in Belfast.
Many are there. I notice you're a bit reluctant to tell me how many there are you?
In Belfast, 8.
8 staff there.
And they manage the enforcement.
But why would centralisation of that facility not be a possibility?
It's historical. Parking enforcement was in place long before decriminalisation of parking came in place. And the two centres that originally managed parking enforcement and the old off-street parking were based in County Hall and Coleraine and in County Hall and Oma. And I myself was based in Oma at that stage. The historical arrangement for collection of all cash was, and reconciliation was always in Craigavon and remains in Craigavon. There are 3 posts in Craigavon. And the introduction of decriminalisation of parking was a headquarters function. They introduced the policy and done all the procurement work in 2005, 2006 to introduce DPE. And that historically was in Belfast, and it remained there that the people that were involved in the introduction of that then were responsible for the management of the enforcement contract that was let out. So the locations are down to history.
But there's nothing to stop those staff concerned being chipped over to district councils.
There is, according to the DSO, there is around about 55 to 60% of our work is involved with on-street parking, and as such, because the majority of it is on-street parking, there is no requirement to be across because of part of the function. I think it also should be noted that a lot of the staff in the Coleraine and the Omagh area are at the lower civil service grades, and as such it would be difficult. They're located in and around those areas, and it would be difficult to transfer. The exact same situation as you have with DVLA staff in Coleraine.
John?
Yeah, Chairperson, it might be useful to know just how many of those staff, many staff are employed are agency staff, and what cuts are. For example, there was no enforcement of taxation now over here.
Within our we have currently 2 staff that are employed as agency staff, and the reason they're employed as agency staff and the reasons are for maternity leaves, cover maternity leaves. One of those maternity leaves is due to come to end in July, another one I think in October.
Anyway, to support the Chairman's remarks, there might be opportunities to create some jobs in Coleraine.
I resist any comments on it.
Okay, we'll not get into that debate because I can see 2 people from the same party disagreeing. Caggle Washington.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, could I just say I welcome all jobs coming to Coleraine or elsewhere in the North West or in the East Bay constituency. Yes.
You want to keep them normal? Is that what?
Sorry?
Keep them normal.
Chair, just the current differential between the revenues expended on enforcement and those from lifted. I think the last time I looked at it was a figure of some 13 million. And that's sort of circle be squared, or you know, it seems a huge amount, and surely that would require an undue increase in charges in order to justify that. To try and make that up at local council level.
I think the DFP arrangements will ensure that it's cost neutral when it transfers to councils, so there won't be a requirement for them to increase charges. However, councils will be in a position to increase, decrease or abolish charges from April 2015.
The differential currently is 13 million, I think. So you know there's obviously a shortfall there, so that's going to have to be addressed by council.
I don't know where you get that 13 million figure from, but currently
well, I think the cost was 22. The revenue raise was 22, and the cost was 35. Is that? Am I right in those figures?
I think last year, in the last published accounts, the revenue was something along the lines of £17 million, and total costs were in excess of that. However, those included costs of the capital costs for the asset. Okay. Broadly speaking, car parking breaks even.
Okay. Right, okay, I'll check up on that, where those figures come. The other question I had, just, Chair, the technical question. I note of the 26 councils, there's one missing. Is that a typo, or is it a rare oversight on behalf of Limavady Borough Council?
Chair, I might have to put my hand up to that. I'd be quite happy to have a look at that, and if it's been omitted, ensure that it is included.
Okay, thank you.
Apologies to Limavady.
Thanks. Centre of the Universe. Thank you, Chair.
Just a couple of things. The service level agreement that you have been mentioning, can we have a copy of that, Sean?
Yes.
Just so we can have a look at exactly what the agreement is, because I think it's in the interest of the public to know exactly what that service level agreement is, and also to the ratepayers of the district councils.
I think to clarify, Chair, that is still in progress at the moment. We haven't an agreement from. We've got to go through all 11 councils to get that agreed. So we're really at very early stages in that.
Well,
Probably.
Perhaps if we also could have information and papers on the discussions that have taken place with the chief executives of the new 11 district councils as well. I think it's important that we see those.
I think all the minutes of the working groups are on the DOE website.
I'm asking you to supply them in relation to that particular area. It's not up to the staff of the committee, so I'm asking the department to supply those. The other issue is, and it's one that I just wonder what consideration you've given to, and you know what has happened with speed cameras across the water? That they've basically become tax revenue machines that district councils have put in all around the place to raise money at a local level, as opposed to perhaps the way it's done here. In terms of the potential for district councils to hype up charges in town centres or city centres in Northern Ireland, there's tremendous dangers with that as well, in terms of actually doing the very thing that councils locally have been, and business organisations right around the province, smaller towns, bigger towns, right through to cities, where they have been actually trying to get parking charges reduced as much as possible, and the department has facilitated that to a degree. There is the potential to actually drive people out of town centres if prices were hyped up. Has that been pointed out to the councils? I assume it's something they'll have high on their radar, but I mean, I think it's something that the department should point out in terms of the facilitation of the reduced charges, not only over the Christmas period, but more recently, where I think it was at 5 hours for £1 or something, and most of the car parks has been facilitated to try and bring business back into, much needed business into town centres. It's just I see dangers there. I know the department wouldn't be able to make any of those, but I mean, I think it's something that's worth pointing out. I think that has been done.
I think just to say the councils have probably been in the lead in terms of representations to DRD in terms of reduction in car parking charges. So this is an opportunity, and councils very much see this, and through the RPA working groups, an opportunity for councils to have that power and more accountable in terms of the charges. So I think they see that opportunity to work positively for town centre management.
I think also, sorry Chair for interjecting, I think also off-street car parks recognise don't lend themselves to CCTV. I think as well as that, the department still has a responsibility for on-street car parking, and going forward, it wouldn't be our intention to introduce CCTV for the purposes of parking enforcement as such.
Okay. I just wonder, I have one final question. In relation to the numbers of the existing commercial firm that does the parking enforcement, can you give us the numbers that are involved for off-street car parks as well, in terms of the other information that we've asked you for, Sean, in relation to... I know that all of their day isn't spent, some of it's on-street, some of it's off-street, but there must be some sort of a matrix to actually indicate how many hours are spent inside the...
deployed hours.
In the actual parks that are being handed over. I assume we have some method of...
That part of like due diligence, we would have that information to show the hours spent on each car park plus the hours spent on the street.
Well, the Deloitte report, was the department involved in financing that as well? That report?
Not financing the report.
Okay. David.
Thanks, John. Just before we conclude on this, there's a system that all bills go through that deems them competent. I just raised a an awareness and a caution. I don't think this bill, as sits here, meets that criteria. And the reason I say that is that there seem to be too many loose ends. Is it possible that we could get some kind of expert? I know there are great many experts around this table, but some kind of second opinion, if you like, that there, if we probably read Hansard as to what's transpired at this meeting, there are loads of questions about things that the bill should be able to deal with. And all it seems to me is this Assembly could be adopting a bill to say to Council, spend or sell as you like. But once we hand it from here, it's down to the Councils and it's out of our hands. But it would be bad practice if it was a bad bill we were sending down, and I'm just concerned about that whatever we send down, we could stand over. I just would like to see if there was some opinion we could get.
Well, I think the method is advised that it's a matter for the Speaker and the Attorney General.
But in realising the competency of the bill, I accept that, which is at this stage. That's how you get to this stage. I mean, I've presented bills myself. In which case, fair play then, I'll fight it in the House.
Yeah, well, I was going to suggest that obviously the committee will, the views once we do all of the consultation, our own work on it, it'll be a matter for us to...
There's little chance to amend it the way it's written, that's the difference, unless you keep adding and adding to it.
Chair, it's maybe a slightly different point, but the departmental solicitors have confirmed that the bill is within the legislative competence of the Assembly, and the Office of the Legislative Council has confirmed that. But maybe
I appreciate the system. As I say, I've been through it myself with bills. I appreciate the system. This doesn't seem to me to be the premise for a good bill, and I would prefer that the Assembly would be sending back good legislation, because it's a dog's dinner for the councils, with all due respect. But it's not it's the things that aren't in the bill that are causing me concern, not the things that are in it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think you make valid points. Two things, I mean, we'd be able to do some work and call whoever in the committee stages, and also we're going to commission some research, our own research in relation to the RPA transfer functions overall as well, which we'll bring back in not too distant future, David.
All right, thank you, Chairman.
Okay, can I thank you, gentlemen? No doubt this is one we're going to be coming back to time and time again, so thank you in the meantime for your presentation. Thanks. Okay, members, we quickly move to agenda item 7, which is SR 2014-135, page 161 of your packs. The committee considered the SL1 at its meeting on the 30th of April 2014, and no issues were raised. The order has subsequently appeared without comment in the Examiner of Statutory Rules report. So I need to put the formal question to you that the Committee for Regional Development has considered SR 2014-135, the Nicholson's Court Newry Abandonment Order, Northern Ireland 2014, and has no objection to the rule. Is that agreed? In agenda item 8 is another SR, and it's 2014-136, page 168 of your electronic packs. Again, it has been through the consultation process and appeared on the Examiner of Statutory Rules in front of the committee on the 30th of April 2014. And I again need to put the formal question to you that the Committee for Regional Development has considered SR 2014-136, the Rowan Tree Road C355 in brackets Dromore Abandonment Order Northern Ireland 2014, and has no objection to the rule. Is that agreed? Thank you. Move then to agenda item 9. Any other business? Okay, members, the next meeting then is on the 11th in room 115. Now, I do want to draw to members' attention that this will be a long meeting. We have quite a number of pieces of evidence in relation to the inquiry that we're conducting at present, and members should note that the meeting is expected to run into the afternoon, and lunch will be provided. Room 115 is, of course, up beside the members' dining room up the stairs. So we do need to be quorate for those evidence purposes, and if anybody's not attending, we need to let the committee clerks know so that we know that we are quorate, because bringing people along, particularly in evidence sessions, and then we're not quorate is very embarrassing. So I know members of other committees in the afternoon, but I'd ask you to have a look at whatever business is on, and at least give us a while in the afternoon to get to a point, because we have actually 2 sessions, I think, coming up. There's next week and when?
2nd of July.
And the 2nd of July is also another longer session in relation to the whole thing as well. So, and in between we have the away day, the residential, which is on the 25th, 26th. Again, that's important. It was important last year. We did it at Le Mans, and I mean, I think it was very successful in what we agreed, members of the SHE, and we were able to put stuff into the forward work programme. So there's big opportunities for us to do that. All the other committees have done it, so I'm keen that our committee as well that does the same thing. So other than that, members, anything in relation to any of those issues? Can I thank the committee staff and declare the meeting closed? Thank you.